There are a few things in the Star Wars galaxy so insidious, so terrifying that they struck fear even into the hearts of Sith Lords. If one organization commanded total respect of both the Jedi and Sith orders, that was Imperial Intelligence. With a reputation that was actually milder than what really went on behind the Ministry of Intelligence Durasteel curtain, Imperial Intelligence was undoubtedly the poisoned dagger in the Sith Empire's hand. In today's video, we're going to talk about how this nefarious institution operated, as well as some of the insanely horrific stuff they did to their enemies and their own people.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Until the Galactic War, Imperial Intelligence was the true Sith Empire's main intelligence service. After the Sith exodus following the Great Hyperspace War, the Sith set up a new government in the Imperial Citadel on Dromund Kaas. This is where the Dark Council was based. Next to the Citadel was the Ministry of Intelligence, where Imperial Intelligence operated. The surface was headed by the Minister of Intelligence, who entered directly to the Dark Council. None of the Ministry's operatives were Force-sensitive, as all Force-sensitives were sent to the Sith Academy on Korriban by law, but that didn't make them any less dangerous. In fact, in many ways, Imperial Intelligence operatives were far more terrifying than their Sith superiors. At least with Sith, you saw it coming. Time and time again, Imperial Intelligence was proven to be the mastermind puppeteer behind important galactic events. In the 3900s BBY, intelligence operatives infiltrated Republic space to instigate the Mandalorian Wars. During the Great Galactic War, they single-handedly interfered in Republic diplomacy, successfully blocking them from allying with the Hutt cartel. They also installed Mandalore the Lesser as a puppet leader under their control to gather the Mandalorians and make them serve the Empire. By intimidating or murdering his opponents in the gladiatorial arena on Geonosis, they manipulated public opinion to declare him the new Mandalore. Imperial Intelligence wasn't just preoccupied with pulling the rest of the galaxy's string either. Within the Empire, they were in charge of controlling the Empire's narrative through propaganda and removing any noses that got a little too nosy. They thwarted terrorist strikes and attempted coups, silenced targets that may leak information, and took care of any Sith that weren't towing the line. Compared to Imperial Intelligence, the Republic Strategic Intelligence Service were a bunch of kittens play-stalking their owners. Imperial agents weren't just competent field agents. They had the full weight of the ministry behind them. This involved a vast network of information gatherers, with operatives buried so deep they even operated out of Tython and Coruscant. They were known for their remorseless, cold professionalism and would stop at nothing to get the job done. They even carried around Sudoku pills in case they were ever caught, so that they would never risk leaking Imperial secrets. To support their operatives, Imperial Intelligence was backed by the Empire's vast scientific research bureaus, such as the Imperial Science Bureau and the Sphere of Biotic Sciences. These scientific organizations worked tirelessly to invent new tools for the agents' use, such as superior stealth generators and weapons, or to find new ways to genetically enhance their operatives, such as by using alien DNA to improve certain biological features. They also constructed cybernetics that supported agents in the field. At this point, you might be thinking that Imperial Intelligence really valued their agents. Hold that thought. The best way to imagine Imperial Intelligence's internal hierarchy was by imagining a pyramid. At the very top was the Minister of Intelligence, who answered directly to the Dark Counselor in charge of the sphere of Imperial Intelligence. Much like ministers in our galaxy and time, he was responsible for all bureaucratic and administrative tasks. He signed paperwork, reported to the Dark Council, and made sure the agency ran smoothly. Other than the Imperial Guard, this was the highest position a non-Force user could reach in the magocratic Sith Empire. Even so, the Minister of Intelligence didn't run intelligence operations. That role belonged to Keeper. Keeper was the second highest rank in Imperial Intelligence, and in some ways, he held even more power than the Minister did. While the Minister managed the logistics, Keeper was responsible for all intelligence operations. He devised and conducted all plans, assigned operatives and funneled information to them, oversaw missions, and handled all Imperial secrets and information. He was the true mastermind behind Imperial Intelligence, and as such, he was one of the most feared people in the galaxy. Although there was only one keeper, there were multiple agents assigned to each of the remaining ranks. Each rank was represented by an official designation followed by a number. This number didn't show rank or even seniority, but was a simple way of distinguishing between two agents of the same designation. All agents' real names were classified and never used. Directly under Keeper were the Watchers. These agents were cybernetically enhanced to have lightning-fast processing abilities. They were tasked with observing missions, gathering and analyzing data to discover patterns and details regular humans would miss. Thanks to their enhancements, they were incredible at their jobs, but this was sometimes used against them by overwhelming their processors with information, as Watcher 2 found out during the Cold War. Fixers, on the other hand, were technical agents who specialized in all things technological, from slicing computer networks to biomechanics and engineering. They also worked on physical technical data sources operatives recovered from the field, such as data spikes or data pads. Minders were Imperial Intelligence's security safeguards. They pieced together enemy movements based on intelligence ciphers brought in, but at the same time they worked tirelessly to ensure all agents currently working in Imperial Intelligence weren't compromised. Essentially, they were the Inquisition's Inquisition. Perhaps the most recognizable of all the ranks, however, were the ciphers. These were the active field agents who, much like James Bond, were skilled in the art of infiltration, assassination, sabotage, and seduction. Their jobs were to get in, get the job done, and get out without ever being detected. And finally, we had informers. These were spies and moles whose job it was to funnel intelligence back to HQ. To maintain their cover, they were often assigned to a specific location and instructed to stay. As we're about to see, however, no operative was safe no matter their rank. If anything, the higher the rank, the more they had to go through. Sadly for the agents, Imperial Intelligence went above and beyond when it came to controlling them and turning them into puppets. We use that term quite literally. May we introduce you to Castellan mind conditioning, a favorite brainwashing technique Imperial Intelligence used on its agents. The process began with a chemical called IX serum, which was distilled from a toxic compound found on Quesh called Demalium-6. Each new dose of IX serum was altered slightly to match the subject's brain chemistry. Once injected with the serum, it took up to a month for it to circulate fully, altering their brain to render them susceptible to compulsions. Once the serum had circulated fully, the subject was conditioned to respond to a code word that activated the brainwashing and forced the subject to obey whatever order followed. Although the process could be repeated to condition the subject to a new code word, it was impossible to remove the brainwashing completely. Imperial Intelligence also indicated in their notes that repeated use of the serum would have negative side effects on the subject's brain functions. The risk involved didn't stop Imperial Intelligence from using it liberally on agents they considered to be potential security breaches, such as Cypher 9. Actively using the mind conditioning was known as placing Castellan restraints on a subject. For all that Imperial agents were shocked to learn of their conditioning, the Republic not only knew of the existence of these code words, but also had a convenient leak inside Sith intelligence to farm them and use them against Imperial operatives as fancy took them, as they wished. That was just the tip of the iceberg. Another project Imperial Intelligence designed and operated for decades was a eugenics program designed to produce perfect future watchers. These operatives were bred to be considerably above average intelligence and had loyalty controls built in to modify their behavior. All of these subjects were loyal to a fault to the Empire and were conditioned to be content in their current positions, unable to love or feel a desire to be anything but a watcher. In addition to their loyalty controls, all watchers were equipped with neural implants to boost their mental processing power. They also served a second purpose, however, which was far more nefarious. Together, the loyalty controls and implants worked to keep the watchers obedient. Refusing orders or being unhelpful toward other agents resulted in horrific headaches that only got worse the longer their defiance lasted. When they complied, the headaches would end. This could and did get worse, however. After the escape of Watcher X, a high-risk operative stationed in Shadowtown so he could be constantly monitored, Imperial Intelligence went the extra mile and modified all Watcher implants to include explosives. If you can't be sure they'll behave, better to be ready to blow their heads off, they reckoned. With that said, if Imperial Intelligence ever felt they were losing control of an agent, the security risk would be dealt with ruthlessly. Any agents that were considered a threat were controlled with the Castellan restraints until they had fulfilled their tasks, then executed. Even retired agents weren't simply allowed to go free. After they had served the Bureau for decades, older agents were imprisoned and kept in reserve in case they should ever prove useful in the future. Given how many agents were literally bred for intelligence service, and that Imperial Intelligence used and abused them liberally, we have to conclude that they were, by far, the most evil organization to exist in the galaxy at that time. They were terrifying and terrifyingly efficient, which, to the Sith, was the ideal combination. For our part, we believe that Imperial Intelligence was a highly efficient, expertly structured intelligence service the remainder of the galaxy would have done well to respect. And there you have it. Imperial Intelligence did what they had to get the job done, and they got it done well. What was your favorite aspect of Imperial Intelligence operations? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.